Greetings, welcome. Come on in and turn it up. It's the Weekly Trim with yours beardly, the one and only Redbeard. I'm getting a little bit better at that guttural growl type voice, so I wanted to do it again one more time because it's going to get annoying here to everybody at some point in the near future. As I said, I am the one and only Redbeard, or at least the only guy who calls himself Redbeard in the next 10 square miles or so. I want to thank you for joining us here on the Weekly Trim podcast here on the Wrestling with Redbeard YouTube channel. Really, I do appreciate everybody being a part of what we're doing here with the channel overall right now. We just added some new match videos here within the past couple of days. Got some more content hopefully coming soon in the form of some interviews with some talent, some good names that are known here in the professional wrestling community around the Mid-Atlantic. Got a buddy of mine who's offered to contribute some of those to what we're doing here on Wrestling with Redbeard, so we're looking forward to seeing what he has for us in the very near future. If you have not already, please do consider subscribing to the channel. We're, like I said, always adding new content, either in the form of match videos, the Weekly Trim podcast here. You know, I said a long time ago when we started this thing that we might not actually live up to that name, the Weekly Trim. But guess what? Over the month of July, we've actually done a pretty good job. I think this might be either our third or fourth episode that we've turned in here. So we've done pretty consistent business with actually living up to the name of the Weekly Trim. So, but we got that going on. We got our old, of course, Wrestling with Redbeard main show episodes there. I'm hoping to do some more of those in the near future. The Jam or Slam videos are still out there. All kinds of fun stuff here on the Wrestling with Redbeard YouTube channel for you to check out and be a part of. So definitely, if you have not already, do consider giving us a subscribe. Click that like button if you enjoy this particular episode, and also leave us a comment. Let us know what you think. Maybe even if you're really considerate, share a link to, say, this podcast on your Facebook wall or your Twitter feed. Yeah, but maybe if you really like us, yeah. Appreciate that a whole lot, yeah. But yeah, you know, just any way you could be a part of the whole shebang here, we definitely would appreciate your help, and thank you highly for all that you do as a fan of what we are churning out here on the Wrestling with Redbeard YouTube channel. Now, I want to get into catching up on where we kind of left off with our last episode. You know, we were talking last time around in a manner of speaking about how life had not been going all that great for me here recently. I was talking about, you know, some health issues that I've been having, still kind of going through those, but we're also talking about how we had not had any luck in terms of our cars, and just how my wife and I both had really just bad luck in terms of having issues with both of our vehicles at the same time. You know, we were on the road there seeing some friends of mine for, you know, the unfortunate scenario of having to visit with them while one of their parents had passed away. Wound up having some tire issues on my truck there. Get back the next day, more or less, and some of the belts in the engine of my wife's car decide it's time to die. So, you know, both of us there were pretty well over a barrel in terms of not having a consistent and reliable vehicle. And that was going to be a big problem going to our next couple of days after that, because we were supposed to be going to Nashville, Tennessee for a conference. And you know what? Through, I'll say, the grace of the Almighty and a couple of family members who were willing to jump in and lend a hand, everything worked out all right. You know, we were able to make the trip. We got there and back just fine. We didn't have any issues whatsoever. We'll say major thank yous to my mother-in-law, I'll just say to my in-laws, period, because they've always come through for us whenever we've been in a bind. But they allowed us to use one of their cars. We were able to take my mother-in-law's Toyota RAV4 to Nashville there. Beautiful car. Rides great. XM radio is an amazing thing. we don't have that on any of our vehicles, so whenever I saw that in hers, I was like, oh, this is a great opportunity to listen to some cool stuff. So, we just had a great experience with our car and in getting to and from Nashville. And, it's just another proof of things working out the way they're supposed to. And all the stress, all the anarchy that went into that couple of days there really just kind of melted away while we were there in Nashville, Tennessee, enjoying a couple of days to, I'll say, ourselves. Because, we were there. Well, I should say my wife was there to attend a conference. I was just there to enjoy the city. She, was in meetings and whatnot during the day, but she and her friends did have opportunities to go out at night and to hang out and to do a little bit of partying and whatnot. But me, on the other hand, I was there as a tourist. And as tourists are common to do these days, I relied almost entirely on Lyft services to get around that city. And Lyft, if you're not familiar, is a app. It's an app very similar to Uber in that you are, it's kind of, I think they call it ride sharing, where you more or less, you're sort of contracting with someone to give you a ride to somewhere. And, it's very efficient, I have to say. Never had used the Lyft service before. I'd used Uber once or twice when we'd been traveling previously, but Lyft just seemed like a good thing to try this time around. Because I had always had people say that this was a little bit more of a positive experience they had with the drivers. And you know what? I can't say that they're wrong, because in using the Lyft service, had very pleasant experiences, nothing bad to speak of there whatsoever, other than the fact that me as a big guy wound up getting shoved into some rather small cars. but that's just, when they call it the Lyft XL service, and they quantify that for maybe something that 2 or 3 people should be taking advantage of. It's also for guys who are in the area of 6'3" and above and need that extra leg room. Because I'll tell you, in having to shove myself into a Honda Accord and to it was a very nice Lexus, actually, that this one driver had. But in having to shove myself into some of these cars, it was a challenge. So definitely be advised there, if you're a bigger person, take advantage of Lyft XL, and I think the Uber XL is also an option there for you. But overall, Lyft was a great experience, a great resource to have, and I'll definitely be using that again in the future. But, we got underway with our trip bright and early on the Thursday morning there of last week, and made the 7.5 hour drive over to Nashville. The car was great, as I mentioned. My mother-in-law has a newer Toyota RAV4 SUV. And as comfortable as it is, over that drive, it did get a little uncomfortable. But, that's just the state of things. When you're in a car that long, it's going to start to get uncomfortable. But still a great car, great experience getting out there and coming back as well. Had no issues whatsoever as far as that's concerned. When we got out there, man alive, I was in no way prepared for the size of the city. In my mind, I still had what Salt Lake City was like last year when we were at the previous iteration of this conference. And out there in Salt Lake, I was able to, pretty well walk around everywhere and not have to worry about taking public transit or taking Lyft services. Although I did ride their their surface train system out there, which was great. Great experience. If you're ever in Salt Lake City, take the trains. They are a wonderful, efficient method of travel that gets you all the way around that city. But here in Nashville, they didn't really have anything of that nature. They did have a bus system, but the Lyft services were just the most efficient way of getting around there. And, I thought whenever we got underway that I had, say, 2.5 days to work with. And then when we actually got there and checked into the hotel, it turned out that I had about a day and a half. Because my wife reminded me, okay, if you're going to do whatever you're going to do, you've got basically 30 hours to work with. And I was like, huh? Well, I thought we were here till Sunday. No, we're leaving Saturday. Okay. This suddenly became more challenging. But as I mentioned there, as soon as we got in, as soon as we got checked into the hotel, I immediately got out and started moving around. My first stop was at the Tennessee State Capitol and Grounds, which is right there in the heart of Nashville. Great to see this area because I've kind of made seeing and stopping at the state capitals of these trips that we've been on a part of them, because here a couple of years ago when we went to Montgomery, Alabama, saw the state capital of Alabama. Last year we were in Utah, saw the state capital of Utah. This year we're in Nashville, Tennessee, saw the state capital of Tennessee. Great experiences, all three of them, because these sites are just incredible in terms of how immaculate and in how really representative of the history and culture of a state. That's entirely what you would expect with them being the state capitals. But that was my first stop there. Spent about an hour and a half touring the grounds there, jumped into a tour that was guided by one of the staff members there at the Capitol. I did have to take the young lady to task at one point in time because I would never say that I'm a history buff, but I am aware of at least history in the part of the world that I grew up in. And Andrew Jackson, who's one of the presidents of the United States, he was born in the Waxhaw area of the Carolinas, which is right between the two borders of North and South Carolina, near where Charlotte and, or I should say, where Mecklenburg County in North Carolina and where Lancaster County in South Carolina kind of meet. That's where those areas are referred to as the Waxhaw area of the Carolinas. Has to do with a Native American tribe that was called the Waxhaws. But that's where Andrew Jackson was born. There's a state park in Lancaster where I grew up and where I was born dedicated to Andrew Jackson. But as part of this tour, they very heavily imply that Andrew Jackson is from Tennessee. Now, it is true that after Jackson served as president, he sort of claimed to be a Tennessean. And near the end of his death, near the end of his life, when he was near death, he claimed to be a Tennessean. But he was still born in South Carolina. So it was just funny to see all this stuff dedicated to him, even though he wasn't born there. So, it is what it is. I guess he could be a Tennessean if he really wanted to be. But it was still funny to have a little bit of I won't say a spat, but a little bit of an exchange with the tour guide there over the fact that, me as a South Carolinian knowing a little bit about Andrew Jackson and being able to say, hey, he's actually our guy. I grew up in a town where there's a painting of him on the side of a building. So, yeah, it is what it is. But great experience there at the grounds. The tour was fantastic. There is a tunnel that leads into the state capitol, which if you're a visiting guest, you really need to see this tunnel, especially when there's nobody else in there. Man alive, it's like something of a spaceship because it's just this glistening, pearlescent, marble that's part of what the constructor or what the facility is constructed out of there. Great to see this thing wall to wall, just as I mentioned, shining as much as could be. Has had a great time there at the state capitol. Got to see the Senate chambers and all the ins and outs of that facility because no one was there. They weren't in session, so it was great to be able to experience the whole thing and just be there when nobody else was around and get the full experience of what that Capitol building is like. From there, I wandered around a little bit. I will say that I got a little bit lost in wandering around that area. I happened upon one of the arenas that are in the area of Nashville, and it wound up being the one that was going to be hosting Ring of Honor Wrestling the next night. I kind of kicked myself because on the marquee, it had that the night prior, Stone Temple Pilots and Bush had been there. And, as someone who grew up as a teenager in the 90s and the early 2000s, man, I kicked myself because those are two bands that I've never seen and always wanted to see. And even with, Scott Weiland having passed away, the original lead singer of Stone Temple Pilots, I still would have loved to have seen that show. So, man, I really kicked myself that we weren't there a night earlier than we were. But, it was what it was. From touring the Capitol, I took another lift down to the Whiskey Row area, which is where Boulevard Street is in Nashville, and that's where all the action happens in Nashville, I'll say, because that's where all the bars, all the honky-tonks are right there in that one little strip of territory. Me, as a little old South Carolina boy, was in no way prepared for that experience there. Oh, man. Wow. You talk about just pure insanity. That's exactly what that area was. And, not in a bad way. That, everybody was very, I'll say, jovial and very fun to be around. But just the level of people, the number of folks who were out there and just partying and having a great time, it was like, wow, I don't know what to do right now. Because me being by myself wandering around there, it was like, where do I go? What do I do? Just, basically, if you're in that scenario and you're out there, the best answer to that question is to get yourself a beer and enjoy the show. Because that's really all it is. It is a show. I'll say this, I didn't spend a whole lot of time out there and just, kind of walking around because I wanted to see it for one. But if you ever, as a person who, may have a girlfriend or whatever, or fiance, wife, whatever it may be, who says they're going to a bachelorette party in Nashville, just know that they're going to have a good time. Trust me, because they're probably going to wind up on the back of a truck or a tractor or a modified school bus, hanging out the sides of it, hollering at people with a cold drink in their hands. That was a very common sight there on Whiskey Road, was people just, as I said, people in revelry and having a great time. So, I can't say anything bad about it. Did have a chance to get some barbecue while I was there on Whiskey Row. Stopped at a place called Jack's. Very small joint. The food was good. Not worth the $40 I paid for it, but it was good. And the other part of that area that I'll mention that was just really astounding was the proximity of it all to the Bridgestone Arena, which is where the NHL franchise, the Nashville Predators, play there in that area. Man, I could not imagine what it must have been like when the team was playing for the Stanley Cup and when you had all those people out there in the road just wandering around. I would have hated to have been a cop for any of the beats in Nashville whenever that was going on. But that was pretty much my first day there in Nashville. Second day, kind of a whirlwind. I tried to get up early and try to get going with some breakfast there at the hotel before going over to tour the Grand Ole Opry. Man, I'm not a huge fan of country music, but as a fan of music in general, I will say that I would have really been disappointed had I not taken the opportunity to see the Grand Ole Opry. It's an amazing facility, so much history and culture reflected there in that building and in how it became this mecca of one genre of music. But, I shouldn't say that. It's not just a genre, or not just important to country music. It's important to music, period. Because, the music industry being what it is, it really is a sign of success and a sign of just, people being artists and being musicians and coming up from nowhere in most examples. So, the Grand Ole Opry stands for a lot of things, and that's, to me, that's a big part of it. The opportunity for someone to really make a name for themselves and to show off just how talented they actually are. Took the backstage tour there. It's only $20 to get in. Very much worth your money, very much worth your time. About an hour and a half was the length of the tour. You get to see all the backstage areas where the talent dress and where they come in at, hear all the fun stories from your tour guide. Got to take a picture there on the stage, got to stand in the circle where, some of those great talents have performed. Just a great experience. Really was worth the time and effort to get out there. And a little bit weird, the next stop on my tour was the Gaylord Hotel. Not very common do you hear people talk about touring a hotel, but in this case, it was something that you really need to see. The Gaylord is a huge facility where you have these little districts that are made up like atriums to where they have all kinds of plant life and whatnot inside of them. It's just a crazy thing to see, and it's a huge. I couldn't imagine how many tens of thousands of square footage this thing takes up, but it's an absolutely huge facility. Great experience in terms of having shopping, dining, entertainment experiences all there under one roof. It's all enclosed. That's the great thing about it, is that it's 95 degrees outside. Well, guess what? Inside there, it's a comfortable 70, 72 degrees. So great thing to experience on a hot day like that, when you can get inside and enjoy your experience as a visitor and not have to sweat to death. So great time seeing the Gaylord there. That was really the majority of my day there. I did also make my first visit to a Topgolf location. Topgolf, I'm going to reserve judgment on until I can play a little bit more there. I had a good time, but it was very much unlike the kind of thing that I typically enjoy, in that it's a lot of raucous noise and sound and fury and all this kind of stuff. And it's a party. It's like everything else in Nashville, but I would like to see a version of Topgolf where it's a little more subdued. I don't know if that exists, but maybe when they open one a little bit closer to home here, maybe it'll be like that. But who knows? Still, Topgolf was kind of fun, but we're going to reserve judgment on that one until we can maybe experience it again at some point in time. We always talk about food whenever we go somewhere like this. One of the best food experiences I had was our last day there. In looking around at maps and whatnot, I looked at names of places, and I tried to find somewhere that looked interesting based on the name. Happened upon Biscuit Love. Yes, Biscuit Love. In the Gulch, no less. It was called Biscuit Love Gulch, which I thought that was the full name. It turns out Gulch actually is just a territory, or an area in Nashville. The name is not actually Biscuit Love Gulch. It's actually Biscuit Love, because there are a couple of these places. It's a restaurant that specializes, as you would imagine, in breakfast foods, particularly biscuits and things centered around biscuits. I had what they refer to as the East Nasty. Oh, man, maybe the best piece of fried chicken I've ever had. It was a boneless chicken thigh that was sort of filleted and fried with their one-of-a-kind dredge, covered in their sausage gravy and served on top of a fresh buttermilk biscuit. Whew, you don't get much better than that right there. But the experience at Biscuit Love was great. Had a fun time there. The only thing about it is whenever I got there, my Lyft driver said, "Oh, you're going there now?" And I was immediately a little bit put off by it, because I'm thinking, oh no, what have I got myself into? I wound up having to wait almost an hour before I was able to get seated. Yeah, but it was worth it. If you go there and you want something good to eat, guess what? You're going to have to face some crowds. And on that morning, I definitely faced a crowd. So it took about an hour to get in, but once I was there, the experience was cool. The only thing I did not like about it was the music that they play inside the restaurant. You'd think with a city like Nashville being as known for country music as it is, that's what they would play. Nope, high energy dance music. Sounded like a rave in there, and I don't know why. I guess it's to keep people pumping and moving and going, but yeah, it just did not do anything for me. So other than that, Biscuit Love gets, I'd say, a 4.5 out of 5. Definitely worth your while in going out there and seeing that whole thing. But, as a whole, the experience in being in Nashville was great. We had a lot of fun out there. Didn't have that much time, realistically, but still really and truly had a great time in Nashville. Looking forward to going out there again at some point in the future. Maybe soon, maybe later. You never really know. But, we enjoy traveling. We enjoy going around and seeing all these different sites and doing all this fun stuff. And it's something that my wife and I have kind of prided ourselves on, because here in our home we have, I'll say, my most prized possession is a board covered in magnets of all the places that we've been. And we've got one on there now representing our trip to Nashville. So, it's one of those things where if people ask you, well, if you had to grab one thing out of your house other than your family and your pets, what would it be? That board with all those magnets on it, that's what I would grab, because those trips really mean something to me. Having seen all that stuff means something to me. So the opportunity to travel and to see things, it's just something special. So it was great to have the opportunity to be in Nashville. Definitely look forward to seeing that city again at some point in the future. But for now, we're going to take a break. We're going to hear some music, and then we'll be back to talk some wrestling.
I grew up in the country, listening to all types of music, anything from Hank Jr. to Eminem. But one thing that was jammed in my neck of the woods was Alice in Chains. And the way Lane Staley sang grabbed you and made you listen to what he was saying. It made you actually feel the words. And that inspires me to write about what I feel and not what people just want to hear.
Hey everybody, thanks for hanging around and for being a part of the Wrestling with Redbeard YouTube channel here with the Weekly Trim. Appreciate everybody tuning in and for being a part of what we're doing here on the show this week. Talked there in the initial segment here of this week's show about the fact that we were in Nashville last week, and I mentioned that we saw the marquee there for the Ring of Honor event. Did not get a chance to attend the Ring of Honor show, unfortunately, because there were some very strong storms moving through the area in Tennessee that we were in, and in the nighttime area there especially, and it was going to be risky to be out without my own vehicle there. and really didn't want to get caught in a storm. It wound up that there were no storms. You hate to say it, but the weather report was totally wrong. There were no storms that we encountered whatsoever. Very clear, very nice weather, other than it being just plain balls hot. But did not get to the Ring of Honor show, unfortunately, so didn't get to enjoy any wrestling while I was out on that trip. But fortunately, there's still plenty of wrestling happening back here at home. And, there was a lot of shows that happened last weekend while we were gone. I feel like I missed out on some of the best shows that have happened in this area in quite some time. And, one of them was the big show there in Chester with APW, Action Packed Wrestling. Brought in a lot of great talent there. And the next night you had, more shows happening all over the region. And then Sunday you had the big PWX versus Fest wrestling event there. Just crazy stuff happening all over the region. And it's going to continue here this weekend and on into the month of August. I wanted to get things kicked off here by talking about an event that we did not get to attend. It actually happened last night up in Blacksburg, South Carolina. This was part of the Peach Festival that we have here in South Carolina every year. Battle Zone Wrestling has gotten to be sort of the go-to promotion that gets to participate in their shows. And you know what? This was the first year that Battle Zone has not had to contend with some type of weather. We were talking about weather potentially affecting my ability to attend that Ring of Honor show. Well, this was the first time that I can remember that, and I should remember because I've been up there for a couple of these shows, and weather winds up either ruining or in some way getting in the way of this event because they've normally had it outdoors. This year, in a gymnasium. Yes. No issues with weather this time around whatsoever. And it looks like they had a pretty good show from the results that I was forwarded. Had a pretty good attendance mark there. It looked like about 150 or so from what we were told. The results from that event were that Austin Jordan defeated Austin Bullock. A couple of young Austins there. An Austin battle, you might as well say. Then you had the tag team of Bay. That's the group of TK Stark and Josh Powers, who defeated the Unbookables, which the Unbookables are a stable of a couple different guys, but in this case, the Unbookable tag team was represented by Adam Jackson and Cruiser Lewis. Then you had Mike Madden defeating fully gimmicked Ethan Case. That's kind of a big deal there, but it looks as though he had some help from his Unbookable brothers there, did Mike Madden, who's the third wheel in that tag team, or in that stable, I should say. Kind of surprising that Ethan Case would be the one to get over on there, seeing as how he is the PWX champion and also a very high-ranking member of the Palmetto Championship Wrestling roster, but it is what it is. Then moving on from there, you had more tag team action as Derek Driver and Myrick Moore, being led by Perry James, one of the preeminent managers in this area, I will go ahead and say, defeated the Sons of Steel, Bryce Anthony and Boomer Payne. That was a pretty significant blow there to the Sons of Steel there in their hopes of getting back into the, I'll say, upper rankings of the tag team echelon or tag team division here in the Carolinas. Then you had another big tag team match. A lot of tag team matches on this show. For a style of wrestling that doesn't get a whole lot of attention, tag teams still a big part of what happens here in the Mid-Atlantic. But you had Hoss Haygood teaming with WWE Hall of Famer Coco Beware, the Birdman himself, as they defeated the Southern Savior John Schuyler and the fabulous Playboy Bob Keller, who dusted off those purple tights one more time and got back there in the ring. Couldn't help out John Schuyler, unfortunately. And then in the main event, you had the Battle Zone United States Heavyweight Championship, I believe they refer to it, being put on the line by Michael Judas, who was able to defeat Bulk Nasty. Bulk Nasty is a talent from up around the Pittsburgh area there up in Pennsylvania. If you've not seen him before, that is a big boy. And, Judas is no small man himself, but Bulk Nasty is definitely a big boy. So that was a lot of beef there in that ring for that match. Looked like they had a good show there up there in Blacksburg. Unfortunately, we weren't able to make it, but we're looking forward to seeing some wrestling, hopefully this weekend, because here today, if you're hearing the show on the broadcast date of July 28th, 2018, you can join us potentially for Pro Wrestling Turbo's event in Greenville, South Carolina. They're going to be actually having an event at a brewery. Wow. Could you think of a better place to hold a wrestling show than a brewery? Maybe a pizza joint, or maybe a pizza joint attached to a brewery, which can actually happen if you're in the right part of Charleston, South Carolina. But this is going to be in Greenville. The venue will be Brewery 85, and Pro Wrestling Turbo, this is their second show, looking to get hot off the heels of their first event, which we had a chance to attend, which was also up there in Greenville. A lot of great young talent attached to this show. The combination of TK Stark and Josh Powers, they've come together to start this program and to start this company, and they've really gathered a lot of really top-notch talent in what's going to be represented here on the card. You've got people like Darius Lockhart, people like Patrick Scott, people like Elijah Proctor, and Tracer X, and all this other great talent that is going to be on hand for this show. Just a really cool combination of people who will be on this program. And, it's possible that this is going to be an outdoor show, if weather is allowable, to where this can be held outdoors. But even so, it's going to be a lot of fun, because this is a venue-specific type thing, to where, because of the proximity to the brewery, you're gonna have some people who have had a pretty good time enjoying themselves with those beverages, and then they're going to enjoy themselves, hopefully, with a good night of professional wrestling action. So we're really looking forward to potentially being at this show. May or may not make it, but again, here, if you're listening to the show on July 28th, 2018, you can make it up to Greenville, South Carolina, and check out Pro Wrestling Turbo. The next night, AML Wrestling, huge event, in that they are bringing in some of the stars from Impact Wrestling to challenge some of their own local homegrown talent. You're going to have people like Caleb Conley, Moose, Eli Drake, Eddie Edwards, Billy Brash, Zane Dawson, all these great talents from two sides of the spectrum here coming together under one roof to all beat the tar out of each other. That's what we're looking forward to anyway. Again, a possibility I may make the trip for this one, but it's going to be up in Greensboro, North Carolina. There's a very small venue, from what I understand, hosting this event called the Triad Stage there in Greensboro. But it looks to be a very fun show. It looks to be a very intimate setting. Hopefully going to be able to make it. May or may not, but I'm hoping to be able to be in attendance for this one. However, if you cannot make it, again, this is happening Sunday, July 29th, 2018. If you cannot make it, you can also tune in to see this program when it's broadcast via Twitch. Twitch has become a very reliable resource for live streaming events, especially in the spectrum of wrestling. So definitely, if you cannot be there, check them out on the Twitch feed there for AML Wrestling. That's what's coming up this weekend. Next weekend, and in the week ahead of there, we've got even more stuff to look forward to, because starting Friday, action-packed wrestling returns. APW, just about every 2 weeks there, they're going to have a consistent show. Don't have an idea yet of who's going to be on this card, but I expect it to be announced here in the next couple of days as to who's going to be on this particular event. I would assume you'd have probably appearances by Zuka King, who of course is the current heavyweight champion there, maybe the tag team champions, the Gymnasty Boys, maybe, who knows, could be there. Just we'll have to pay attention to their Facebook and social media feeds to get an idea of who will be at that event. The next night, after APW, August 4th, 2018, you have Palmetto Championship Wrestling returning for another event. They have gotten to where they almost run 2 shows a month here with Palmetto Championship Wrestling, but they will be debuting in Elgin, South Carolina, for what they are calling a program dubbed Law and Disorder. Not really sure what that has to do with what's going on there, but it is what it is. Law and Disorder will be, as we mentioned, there in Elgin, South Carolina. And again, they are really bringing in a lot of cool talent as Palmetto Championship Wrestling. This was the show, or this is the show that will follow their Palmetto Classic tournament, which was held last month. or this month I should say, here in July. And for this show, they've got even more big stuff happening because, of course, you'll have Drew Adler returning as champion. But then you've got a big tag team match that the Ugly Ducklings will be taking on the Monster Squad of Billy Brash and Josh Cutshaw. They've got another match for the PCW Soda City Championship, something I'm very much looking forward to seeing there, as Kevin Ray will be challenged by Patrick Scott. Patrick Scott, if you've never seen him before, has been on NXT programming. He's from the eastern part of North Carolina, works primarily up in that part of the world, but he's starting to get more into the center aspect here of the Carolinas and working for promotions like PCW, PWX, and others. So looking forward to seeing more of him in action around this part of the world. If he gets that Soda City Championship, you'll definitely see more of him. But then in what I believe will be the main event of the program, it's some type of a scramble type match for the heavyweight championship that will involve new champion Drew Adler and I believe at least 4 other men. I'm trying to go through some notes as I'm talking here. It looks as though it will be Drew Adler being challenged by, and I just want to make sure I get this right before I start talking here, Drew Adler will be challenged in what they're calling the Elgin Eliminator match by Elijah Evans IV, James Johnson, Tie-Dye Sunrise himself, the independent variable Tracer X, fully gimmicked Ethan Case, and the Southern Savior John Schuyler. In my opinion, you've got at least 3, I'll say, of the top guys in the entirety of the Mid-Atlantic in that one match. Yeah, that's at least 3 of the top guys, maybe 4. At least one guy who's in the top 10 is in that cluster there as well. But man alive, that's a great gathering of talent there in that one match, and all working for Palmetto Championship Wrestling. And that's not all, folks. If that was enough for you, I'm sorry, but guess what? We've got more. Because WWE will also be making a loop through the Carolinas starting next Saturday and Sunday. They're going to be doing some house shows, doing some live shows, TV tapings, whole 9 yards. So yeah, if you're a wrestling fan, I've said it before and I'll say it again, if you're a wrestling fan, you have no reason to not find something that you could see live and in person, either at one of these independent events or at a WWE event or something. It's there. Trust me. Just do a little bit of research. You will find it. I guarantee it. And it will be worth your while. Because, for example, tonight at the Peach Festival, if you were to have attended that show, guess how much it would have cost you? $5. You cannot get a Coke at a movie theater for $5. And you could have gotten into that event for $5. You could take your entire family for less than what you'd pay for, a meal at a nice restaurant. It's very much worth your while. Spend a little bit of time on social media, on the web. Find some promotions that are near you. Support them. Get to know your local talent and have a good time with some professional wrestling. That's it for our wrestling roundup here on this edition of the program. We're going to take another break, and then we'll be back to talk a little bit of sci-fi movie news. Stay tuned, folks. Be back in a few moments.
Back it was the summer I turned 18. We lived in a one-room run-down shack on the outskirts of New Orleans. We didn't have money for food or rent, to say the least. We were hard-pressed, but Mama spent every last penny she had to buy me a dancing dress. Well, Mama washed and combed and curled my hair. She painted my eyes and lips. Well, then I stepped down into a satin dancing dress that I split on the side and cleaned up to my hips. Well, it was red velvet trim and it fit me good. Standing back from the looking glass, there stood a woman where I had a young kid and stood. Here's your one chance, fancy, don't let me down. Said, here's your one chance, fancy, don't let me down. Mama does a little bit of perfume on my neck, then she kissed my cheek. And I saw the tears welling up in her troubled eyes as she started to speak. She looked at the pitiful shack and then she looked at me and took a ragged breath. She said, your paws run off and I'm real sick and the baby's gonna starve to death. do. She said, just be nice to the gentleman fancy, they'll be nice to you. Here's your one chance fancy, don't let me down. Here's your one chance fancy, don't let me down. Oh, forgive me for what I do. Well, if you want out, well, it's up to you. Well, don't let me down. Your mama's gonna move you uptown. Well, that was the last time I saw my mom, the night I left that rickety shack. The welfare people came and took the baby, mama died and I ain't been back. Well, but the wheels of fate that were starting to turn, and for me there was no way out. It wasn't very long till I knew exactly what mama been talking about. I knew what I had to do, and I made myself this solemn vow. Oh, I was gonna be a lady someday, though I didn't know when or how. But though I couldn't see spending the rest of my life with my head hung down in the shade, you know I might have been born just a plain white trash, but fancy wasn't my name. Here's your one chance fancy, don't let me down. Said here's your one chance fancy, don't let me down. It wasn't long after a benevolent man took me in off the streets, and 1 week later I was pouring his tea in a 5-room hotel suite. I joined a king, a congressman, and the occasional aristocrat. And then I got me a Georgia mansion and an elegant New York townhouse flat. Well, I ain't doing bad. Now in this world there's a lot of self-righteous hypocrites that call me bad. They criticize mama for turning me out no matter how little we had. But though I ain't had to worry about nothing from now on 15 years, well, I can still hear the desperation in my poor mama's voice ringing in my ear. Here's your one chance fancy, don't let me down. She said, here's your one chance fancy, don't let me down. Lord, forgive me for what I do. Well, if you want out, it's up to you. Don't let me down. Your mama's gonna move you uptown.
Welcome back, everybody. Thank you for continuing to hang out with us here on this episode of the Weekly Trim on the Nashville Redbeard YouTube channel. If you have not already, please do consider subscribing to the channel. That way you'll be the first to know whenever we've uploaded something new, and you'll be able to catch up, of course, on all the goings-on of what we've been up to here in recent past, whether it be uploading match videos, interviews, Jam or Slam content, all kinds of fun stuff here on the Nashville Redbeard YouTube channel for you to check out and be a part of. That having been said, this is convention season. A lot of conventions going on. Of course, we just got off of San Diego Comic-Con here within the past couple of weeks. Really big event out there. It's always huge. But this year, unlike others, you didn't have a whole lot going on there in terms of a presence by Marvel, Disney, Star Wars, etc. And that was, kind of a shock to a lot of people, because usually here within the past couple of years, they've had a major contingency there showing off whatever their next greatest thing might be. This year it wasn't the case. This year, DC and other companies had an opportunity to really go out there and hit one out of the park. And I think several creators did just that. You had some real excitement coming off of the trailers that were shown for Shazam and Aquaman. And the other big one was Godzilla King of the Monsters. Ooh, that looks just plain crazy to see that thing there. But, still kind of a shock to not see Disney and Marvel and Star Wars all that highly represented. And it's one of those things where you wonder why as a fan. Is this sort of them admitting, hey, we made some mistakes here. We put out too much too soon. We saturated the market, and now nobody really wants this stuff. You have to, really wonder those things, because people talk about a movie like Solo for not being a success, despite the fact that really and truly, business-wise, it didn't do that badly. Was it a was it $1 billion franchise? No, by no stretch of the imagination. Was it even all that good of a movie? And personally speaking, yes, I thought it was good, but for the most part, people thought it was a very subpar addition into the overall Star Wars mythology. It's hard for me to really talk about this and not get upset, because people have said for years, Star Wars is not that great, Star Wars is not that good anymore, they're just milking this whole thing, and it got even worse when The Last Jedi came around, and people didn't receive that movie all that well. It was not appreciated for what it was. And here again, speaking truthfully and from the heart, the first time I saw that movie, when I walked out of that theater, I did not like it. I did not like that movie at all. But I forced myself to see it again. And really and truly, the second time I saw it, I went into the theater thinking, okay, did I not like this movie because of what they did creatively? Or did I not like this movie because it was actually a bad movie, meaning it was poorly made? And the answer to that was the former. I just plain didn't like the creative choices that were made in terms of, spoiler alert, killing off Luke Skywalker. It just didn't seem like, all right, this is what we need to do at this point in time. But realistically speaking, I think we're at a point where we have to understand two things about Star Wars in particular. Marvel, I'm going to kind of leave out to its own, because Marvel is doing fine. Infinity War made tons of money, and guess what? Whenever they come out with another film that's tied to Infinity War, it's going to make even more money, because people are going to be sitting on the edge of their seats until that thing comes out. But when it comes to Star Wars, we've now gotten to a point where we have to accept that each of these films is part of a larger whole, a much larger whole, a much, much larger whole. Because with all this stuff, all this material being considered canon now, and what I mean by that is the Clone Wars animated series, the Star Wars Rebels animated series, the main films, the standalone films, all this stuff is now starting to tie together. So when you have something like The Last Jedi come out, and people not receive it all that well, you have to look at, why was it not appreciated? And in my opinion, I think not enough people appreciate The Last Jedi for what it is. And I'm going to say that because of this. Carrie Fisher's untimely death really sent that movie into a tailspin, I believe anyway. I don't have any real proof behind this, but I really feel as though that her death caused that movie to be entirely different than what it would have been otherwise. I feel like they had to almost redo a majority of that film because she wasn't going to be there for episode 9. And, as sad as it was for her to pass on, it was even more sad, I'm sure, creatively for people behind the scenes who had to suddenly come to terms with the fact that, all this effort that we've put into making this film and to making this segment of this franchise work, we've now got to do again. We've now got to try and find a way to fix it, because, it was what it was at that moment. It was a tremendously sad thing for her to no longer be with us here on this plane of existence, but even more so in terms of that movie and in terms of what it was. So that's been my opinion forever, is that they had to change that film to be something else. And in changing that film, they of course had to change episode 9 as well, because I'm fairly certain that they had the layout for all 3 of these movies pretty much in place whenever they began shooting episode 7. And to have it all kind of, I hate to say wrecked, but to have it all, get jacked up there by one causality, because we're all mortal, unfortunately, but to have it all get jacked up there in one moment was just really something that threw a wrench into the whole machine that is the Star Wars franchise. So, I think people have been overly critical of what's been happening here recently, especially in relation to The Last Jedi. Solo, that's a whole different ball game there, because with the casting, with the issues they had in terms of production, the original directors being fired, Ron Howard coming in to kind of save what he could, it's a real challenge to look at that thing and to say anything other than, good job with what you had to work with. Boys, really and truly, you had a pile of chicken poop, and you managed to make some kind of chicken salad here. It's chicken salad with grapes and nuts and whatnot in it, but it's still chicken salad. So was Solo that bad? Is the state of the entire Star Wars galaxy in that much peril? I don't think so. I think they probably will do a wise bit of backing off here and treat this a little bit more as it should have been, as a special thing. I'm still hoping for some of the standalone movies to get made. I know they've backed off on them entirely here. They were very close to starting production on something for Boba Fett, and there was all that talk of potentially Ewan McGregor coming back to reprise his role as Obi-Wan for an Obi-Wan standalone film. The talk of maybe a Yoda movie, all this stuff was out there. It's all kind of backed off now, but maybe, when things get warm here again in the next maybe 6, 8, 12 months, as we approach time to begin promoting Episode 9, maybe it'll come back around. Maybe we'll have what we were supposed to have. And, maybe it'll be better than what it is now. But we'll have to wait and see, and just hope for the best as Star Wars fans and as fans of sci-fi in general to see what happens here. But, I'm certainly looking forward to seeing what happens. Especially, we talk a lot about theme parks and whatnot on this show here. Still especially looking forward to seeing what they do with the Galaxy's Edge projects in the Anaheim Park and also down in Orlando. That's going to be absolutely insane to see in person, but still got a long ways to see what happens there as well. So a lot of stuff to potentially look forward to. It's not broken, folks. It might be limping, but it's not broken. So hopefully here in the next little bit, they'll give us all a sign that we don't have any reason to lose faith, and that we can still believe that the Force is with us. We'll take another break, and then we'll be back for What's Redbeard Drinking. Appreciate you guys tuning in here on the Weekly Trim on the Rascal Redbeard YouTube channel.
Take the children away.
Wearing the badge and wearing robes of white. same that burn crosses. Some of those that work forces are the same that burn crosses. Some of those that work forces are the same that burn crosses. Some of those that work forces are the same that burn crosses. Ooh! Killing in the name of. They told you. Now you're under control. And now you do what they told you. Now you do what they told you. Now you do what they told you. I'm justified wearing the badge and wearing robes of white. Things that die. I'm justified wearing the badge and wearing robes of white. Things that die. I'm justified wearing the badge and wearing robes of white. Justified those that die wearing the badge and wearing robes of blue. Tell me, fuck you, I won't do what you tell me. Fuck you, I won't do what you tell me. Fuck you, I won't do what you tell me. Fuck you, I won't do what you tell me. Fuck you, I won't do what you tell me. Fuck you, I won't do what you tell me. Fuck you, I won't do what you tell me. Fuck you, I won't do what you tell me. Fuck you, I won't do what you tell me. Fuck you, I won't do what you tell me. Fuck you, I won't do what you tell me.
Everybody, appreciate you tuning in and hanging out with us here on the Weekly Trim. Welcome back from that musical break there. You know, we always try and do some interesting things with the music here. Always try and find cover tunes, but that's gotten kind of tough here. I hate to say that in just doing this program for the brief length of time that I've done this, that I've started to exhaust the cover tunes that are out there. And what I mean by cover tunes, of course, is some other artist than the originator of a particular song doing their version of it. I hate to say that we've started to hit the wall in terms of those offerings, but I'm starting to find less and less of what I actually like out there. So if you have a suggestion, have something you want to hear on the show, or if you have some source of material that you want to have shared on here, let us know. Send us a comment or a message through YouTube here, and we'd be glad to get that on the program. But as it is, we are to that very, very, very special moment in the show where Redbeard has a beverage, or Redbeard gives his review on something. We're not always going to be drinking here on this part of the program. We might be just talking about some product that we've encountered or whatnot. Might be talking about, a particular food item that we've been able to review, or any other thing that we just feel like giving a criticism of. However, for the past couple of weeks anyway, it's been What is Redbeard Drinking? And it's going to be What is Redbeard Drinking here tonight again as well, because we have another entry into the, we'll say, malt beverage spectrum of beverages. This is a offering from the Seagrams Escapes Spiked series. This was something, again, that I picked up at our local purveyor, which is our local BP station here in St. Matthews, South Carolina, because it's pretty much the only place we have to go to get any type of beverage of this nature. And this one, there were several that they had there on display. This one just looked interesting because of the fact that it had watermelon on the can. I love watermelon, so I figured, hey, let's give this one a chance. This is the Jamaican Me Happy variety. and it is said to include flavors of lemon, strawberry, watermelon, and guava. So, in looking at this thing, this is a nice, pretty pink can as well. So I'm going to look really manly drinking this beverage. But this is an 8% ABV offering here from Seagrams. And the description, as it is written here on the website, there's no text on the can, unfortunately. But on the website, the spiked series as a whole is described as whether it's a day drinking session, enjoying a few at the end of a day, or kicking off a night you'll never forget, Seagrams Escapes Spiked means holding nothing back, inspired by loud and crazy nights at the club. And Lord knows I've had plenty of those in my life. Yeah, right. Spiked takes your favorite Seagrams Escapes flavors and turns the volume all the way up. Grab a friend, choose your flavor, and get the party into high gear right off the bat. Not just started, but lit up and ready to explode into a colorful, fun-filled action. Yeah, I'm suddenly wondering if I want to drink this or not, because I don't want to be in a club. I don't want to be in a noisy environment. I want to go to sleep. I really do. No, not really. But this is, a description like that. I'm still going to drink this. I'm still going to probably enjoy it, hopefully. But the descriptor of it being something where you can get hopped up and go to the club, come on. Do we really need that? No, not really. But then looking down a little bit further on the webpage here, under the actual segment dedicated to Jamaican Me Happy, it says, charged with citrusy lemons, succulent strawberries, juicy watermelon, and mouth-watering guava. As we said, this is a 8% ABV offering here. Pretty much in line with most of what you see out of this type of beverage category, whether it be Mike's Hard or Lemonade, or not quite in the same spectrum as like the Four Locos that are out there, because they're usually between 10 and 12. I think there's some of those might even be 14% ABV. But, they're all kind of in that same ballpark in terms of the alcohol involved. I'm looking at this can here, and wow, I'm starting to regret my decision to choose this one. But this watermelon, lemon, strawberry combination is suddenly not looking. Okay, let's just drink this thing and see what goes on here. We're going to go and pop the top and see what this thing has to do. If I can get my fingernail under the lid there. There we go. And immediately, I did not even have the tab pushed all the way down, and immediately I was getting hit with the sweet strawberry type of that, and it's not the real strawberry. It's that fake Kool-Aid type strawberry aroma. So let's put the nose to it and see what this actually smells like. Yeah, it smells like a snow cone, like a nice sugary snow cone that you would get from, what's the name of that place, Snowbiz or whatever the other one is that's out there these days. It smells a lot like that in terms of that candied, fruity flavor that's very sweet, obviously, even just getting a whiff of it. So let's see if we can detect all these various flavors and see what this thing actually tastes like here. Ooh, wow. Oh, man. That's a little hard to process. Really and truly, that's kind of difficult to process. Because there's so much, I won't even call it flavor, but there's so much going on here in this combination of stuff, as I'm going to call it, that you can't pick out anything in particular. Now, I will confess that this is not the first beverage I've had here this evening, but even so, this is very confusing to the palate. You do get the overwhelming flavor, I'll say, of like a fake watermelon, fake strawberry sensation there immediately and right off the bat, and it kind of prevails over everything in this mix. Not picking up too much of the citrus flavor there, and didn't really have any type of that sort of citric acid tinge to it whatsoever that you would normally get out of something that claims to have citrus involved there. This is not as sweet as I was expecting it to be, but it is still very sweet. Not picking up a whole lot of that, alcohol, malty beverage type flavor to this here either. So it's a little bit dangerous in that regard. But let me try and hit this one more time and see what we actually get out of this thing, if it's any different from that first experience. Wow. I'm trying to let it sit on my tongue here for a moment to see if I can actually get a better idea of what this thing is. Wow, this is just really weird. Wow. The watermelon is definitely the most prevalent flavor here. I'm still not getting any of the citrus. That's not necessarily a bad thing, but just it really, this tastes more like watermelon and strawberry than anything. Wow, it's very peculiar in terms of the fakeness of it. I shouldn't be surprised because there's nothing in this as far as like fresh fruit juice or whatnot is concerned. But wow, just a very peculiar set of flavors in the way they come across in this beverage. Because I think if you were to normally take, watermelon juice and strawberry juice and combine them, they would be probably pretty good together, especially over something like a snow cone, as I was talking about here a moment ago, or a shaved ice, or an Italian ice, or something of that nature. This thing here is just confusing. Ooh, man. I will say this, my tongue is spiked at this point in time, because I don't know what to make of this. It's not bad. I'm not going to say it's good either, but it's drinkable, I guess is the best way of putting it. And at 8% ABV, if you have one or two of them, guess what? It's going to take care of you and put you in a good mood for your night at the club there, as the description says. So maybe that would help. Maybe if I had some rave music going on in the background and lights flashing everywhere, this would be more of an enjoyable experience than it is. Wow. I'm going to give this one a pass, to be honest with you. I'm not very thrilled with this. Wow. So, yeah, that having been said, I'm still probably going to finish this drink, but I'm not going to be aiming towards the Seagrams varieties here again, because I think if I remember correctly and looking at the website, there are maybe 4 or 5 of these things, if not more. Yeah. Eesh, wow. Whew, boy. Maybe something that's, I'll put it like this, maybe one of the varieties that's not as involved in terms of the variety of flavors might be better than this one. Because there is a strawberry daiquiri, and there is some other stuff that's a little bit more condensed in terms of what they're trying to do flavor-wise here. But man alive, the Seagram spiked Jamaican me happy. Oof, it's Jamaican me confused. Wow. And all that having been said, this has been another edition of the Weekly Trim here on the Wrestle with Redbeard YouTube channel. Man alive, I hate to go out on kind of a confused note there, but this one has just really turned me sideways here, folks. Man, wow. Okay. But we appreciate all that you do in tuning in and being a part of what we're doing here on the Wrestle with Redbeard YouTube channel. Appreciate your likes, your comments, your subscriptions, and all that you guys have done to contribute to what we're doing here and trying to grow this channel. We'll see you down the road.